In just 7 minutes, Justice Clarence Thomas fined Jasmine Crockett $500 million. Without a trial, without evidence, without mercy. The courtroom froze. Cameras rolled. The nation held its breath, watching a Supreme Court justice try to bury a rising congresswoman alive. But Jasmine, she refused to bow. What she did next ignited a political firestorm that ripped through Washington like an earthquake. Careers collapsed, secrets spilled, and the very balance of power began to crack. Stay with me. This is a story worth every single second of your time. Outside the Alexandria Federal Courthouse, the bitter wind cut like glass. At 8:03 a.m., black SUVs pulled up, grim, silent, like a funeral procession. Jasmine stepped out, not in cuffs, not under arrest, but summoned on a sealed emergency motion, accused of donor fraud. No notice, no preparation, just consequences written in fire. Inside, the press swarmed, shoulders pressed tight, microphones like weapons. Everyone sensed it. This wasn't justice. It was an execution in disguise. And then the bombshell. Presiding was none other than Justice Clarence Thomas. Civil suits weren't even his domain. So why was he here? What was so dangerous that the highest court's shadow fell on this room? I leaned in, softer. Jasmine sat tall, unreadable. She wasn't there to fold. She was there to fight, even though the rules had already been burned. Across the aisle, Prosecutor Malcolm Reed stared through her, not at her, the hunter who had already claimed his prize. The courtroom walls seemed to close in. Cameras streamed to millions. Jasmine wasn't on trial. She was already condemned. No jury, no evidence. Just an allegation and a trap. Then, with chilling finality, this court finds Representative Jasmine Crockett liable under civil fraud statutes. Damages $500 million. The words slammed into the room like a car crash. Reporters gasped. Even the stenographer hesitated. And Jasmine, she didn't flinch. $500 million. More than most cities could dream of spending. And yet, no records reviewed, no witnesses called, no evidence considered. In a nation that preaches liberty and justice for all, Jasmine Crockett had just been publicly executed. Without a trial, without a chance, without mercy. Within minutes, headlines exploded like a firestorm. Congresswoman hit with $500 million fine in shocking civil ruling. Was it justice or a political ambush? News anchors trembled, some gloating, others stunned. Radio hosts turned her into a joke. Online hashtags became battle flags. Crockett crushed versus justice hijacked. But to millions watching, it wasn't law they saw. It was punishment, wrapped in procedure, a warning dressed as a verdict, a black congresswoman silenced, not by impeachment, not by scandal, but by unchecked power willing to torch the Constitution just to bury her name. The message was brutal. Rise too high, speak too boldly, and they won't debate you. They'll destroy you. Not with bullets, but with gavels. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't always a symbol. Before the cameras, before the hashtags, there was just a young woman. No bodyguards, no title, racing against a system designed to shut her out. 6 years earlier, Dallas heat shimmering. Gas tank empty. She was due in court in 12 minutes, representing a grandmother about to be evicted by a senator's cousin. No ride, no backup. Jasmine kicked off her heels, sprinted 2 blocks in a pencil skirt, sweat pouring, heart pounding, and made it inside with 30 seconds to spare. Barefoot, flushed, unshaken, she tore through the opposing attorney's case so cleanly, the judge asked to hear her closing twice. She won, not because she was polished, but because she was dangerous with the truth. Jasmine didn't grow up with wealth or connections. She grew up where street lights flickered out, where grocery stores locked baby formula behind glass, where lawyers only showed up when something had gone wrong. She framed her first paycheck, $213, for defending a wrongfully accused teen who had never been asked a question that wasn't a threat. While others climbed through galas and fundraisers, Jasmine fought through protests, shelters, union halls. Her name wasn't scribbled on cocktail napkins. It was spray painted on cardboard signs. She didn't run because someone told her to. She ran because no one else would. No billionaires, no polished TV ads. Just folding chairs in church basements, crackling microphones, and a fire that couldn't be staged. The people who stood behind her had never even voted before, but they came out for her. Cleaning women from the Capitol, Retired men robbed. In a soundproof conference room just blocks from the Capitol, prosecutor Malcolm Reed tapped his pen against Jasmine's photo. "She's too clean," he muttered. But no one stays clean under pressure. Across from him sat two DOJ advisors, tied to the corporate pacts Jasmine had exposed. They weren't scared of her personality. They were terrified of her momentum. Their plan was ruthless. Launch a vague civil fraud case, skip the indictment, skip the jury, and crush her with a fine so massive it would end her career before midterms. But they needed legitimacy. They needed a name too powerful to challenge. That's when one name was whispered: Clarence Thomas. On paper, it was absurd. A Supreme Court justice presiding over a civil case. But in the shadows, genius. Thomas wouldn't draft charges or argue facts. He would simply be the face. The hammer, not the hand. And so, without explanation, the gavel fell. Cameras captured it. Vulture circled. But under that crushing weight, Jasmine didn't collapse. She calculated. She turned to her lead counsel, Isla Hartman, and whispered just 9 words. "It's time to turn the cards." To most, it went unheard. But to Isla, it was thunder. Jasmine wasn't surrendering. She was springing a trap. Isla rose slowly, storm-like. A former federal investigator turned civil rights litigator. Known not for flash, but for precision. Every move sharp, deliberate. From beneath the defense table, she lifted a golden envelope. Its seal unbroken, but its weight unmistakable. The truth inside could blow the case wide open. The envelope came from deep inside the Department of Justice, smuggled out by a whistleblower who risked everything to expose the lie. Isla Hartman's heels echoed against the marble floor like a countdown. Reed gripped his pen. Justice Thomas leaned forward, uneasy, as if he knew this wasn't evidence, it was reckoning. The envelope touched the bench like a ticking bomb. The room froze. No cameras clicked. No one breathed. When the seal broke, the illusion of order shattered, replaced by the sharp scent of fear. Thomas unfolded the first page, an internal DOJ audit, dated months before charges were filed. It revealed the irregularities in the Hope Forward program weren't fraud at all, but a software error by a third-party vendor. Jasmine had no control, no access, no knowledge. She wasn't the culprit, she was a sponsor, not an operator. Thomas blinked, his jaw tightened. That alone could unravel the case, but then he turned the page. A second document, an email thread. Headers intact, names redacted. Subject line, Crockett Optics. The words stabbed the silence. "If we don't move on her now, she'll dominate midterms. Use donor confusion. Public won't question a fine. The media will fill in the blanks." Another reply. "Thomas will deliver the ruling tooth." A Supreme Court name kills backlash. Timing matters. Do it before October. Reporters froze mid-type. A pen clattered to the floor. It wasn't just sloppy prosecution, it was a coordinated takedown, political theater dressed as justice. Thomas's hands shook, his whisper cut through the chamber. This was never about justice. For the first time in 3 decades, the robe weighed heavy, not with honor, but with guilt. Jasmine didn't smile. She didn't flinch. She simply watched as truth cracked the marble throne. Across the aisle, Malcolm Reed, the golden boy of high-profile trials, sat frozen. His eyes darted, his hands trembling over his files, as if sheer willpower could erase what the world had just seen. But the truth was out, and there was no unseeing it. A folder slips from his trembling hands, papers scattering across the courtroom floor with a loud slap. Gasps ripple through the room. He reaches down, but his hands shake so badly that the papers only crumple. His assistant leans in urgently, perhaps advice, perhaps mercy, but he waves her off blindly. His pale face glistens with sweat, chest rising too fast, silk tie twisting at his neck like it too wants to escape. The man once built for sound bites now can't form a single word. Not because he lacks them, but because every word would bury him deeper. "Mr. Reed," Judge Clarence Thomas finally speaks, and the entire room falls silent. Even the lights seem to hum lower, bracing for impact. The master of spin had no spin left. His arguments, his power, built on buried evidence, were now unearthed, live on camera. Across the aisle, Jasmine remains perfectly still. No smirk, no flinch. Her silence cuts sharper than words. Where he breaks, she endures.
The contrast is undeniable.
And when Justice Thomas rises, it's not with thunder, but with slow, heavy movement, hands pressing against the bench, knuckles white. For once, the mask of untouchable authority cracks. His voice is low, almost tired, yet it carries the weight of consequence greater than any. Under a bare light, one podium, one mic, Jasmine Crockett stands steady, no smile. No polish. Her voice low, calm. If you came here for fury, pause, soft breath. You won't find it. If you came for revenge, look elsewhere. I survived yesterday for one reason only, to deliver the truth. Room stills, mics lean closer, reporters frozen. My name was dragged through the mud, my reputation nearly destroyed. I stood trial without evidence, sentenced without argument, and the system, our system, was ready to bury me under $500 million because I wouldn't play by rules that were never written, but always enforced. She lets silence hang, eyes fixed forward. I'm still standing, but I refuse to be the exception. I didn't walk out of that court just to clear my name. I walked out so no one else ever has to. Lifts one finger, firm tone. First, full disclosure of exculpatory evidence. No delays, no withholding. If the government has proof of your innocence, it must be revealed immediately. Hiding truth isn't strategy, it's a crime. Gasps ripple, hands race across paper. Second finger, stronger voice. Second, real whistleblower protection. Not symbolic, not buried in loopholes. Independent channels, emergency defense funds, because no one should lose their career for telling the truth. Exposing corruption should not be a suicide mission. Silence, thick, heavy, her breath audible in the mic. Third finger raised, voice rising, clear and sharp. Third, a permanent bipartisan judicial oversight council. Equal appointments, real teeth, full authority to investigate judges, prosecutors, federal agencies. No more hiding behind gowns. No more immunity cloaked in procedure. If you weaponize justice, you will be named, investigated, and held accountable in daylight. She steps back slightly, gaze unflinching. No applause, no theatrics, just silence pressing down like stone. This wasn't charisma. It wasn't performance. It was truth, spoken plainly, like terms of war. Her voice soft, a whisper meant to last forever. Yesterday, I was on trial. Today, I put the system on notice. We are not afraid, we are not confused, and we are going nowhere. One last beat, then she steps back. No smile, no theatrics. Only quiet conviction, the kind that feels unstoppable. But in America, even truth needs a megaphone. And that megaphone arrived louder than her words. A leaked confession on tape. At first, it looked ordinary. A plain file, blurry thumbnail, 4 minutes long. But a watchdog researcher clicked, and what played made her sit bolt upright. Carl Hensley, DOJ Deputy Director, leaned back, speaking flatly. We need to move now. If we don't neutralize Crockett before the midterms, she'll be unstoppable. Leak something. Invent something. People don't check. They just want a villain. A nervous laugh. Someone off screen. Wait, are we recording this? 5 seconds of frozen silence. Then a curse. Screen goes black. The file hit X. By 7:38 a.m., posted. By 8:05, tens of thousands of reposts. By 9 a.m., every major outlet looping it nonstop. No spin, no filter, raw evidence. Hashtag surged. Hashtag DOJ conspiracy. Hashtag Crockett was set up. Hashtag neutralizer. Trending worldwide. TikTok filled with side-by-side reactions. Veterans in tears, lawyers seething, students stunned. On Reddit, legal experts unpacked federal codes line by line, dozens of laws shattered. People didn't ask for accountability. They demanded it, fury in their veins. By nightfall, protests lit up a dozen cities. In D.C., signs read, "She spoke. They schemed. Whistleblowers save nations." In Dallas, her face was painted 8 feet high on a courthouse wall. Truth survives. Inside Congress, panic spread like wildfire. Whispers turned into emergency meetings. By 6:14 p.m., the House Oversight Committee, unanimous, bipartisan, rare as lightning, authorized public hearings into DOJ misconduct, conspiracy, and obstruction. The subpoenas came fast. Carl Hensley was suspended within the hour. As he stepped out of DOJ headquarters, jaw tight, refusing to answer reporters' shouted questions, by morning, 3 senior DOJ officials were also placed on leave. More were rumored. The Inspector General launched a full audit. Senate hearings were announced. Headlines roared. NYT, DOJ on trial. Washington Post, she was right. But the one that stuck came from a small independent outlet. Jasmine Crockett didn't just survive, she sparked the reckoning. This wasn't fallout. It was a tectonic shift. The public had seen how truth was buried, heard the voices plotting, and felt the system crack from the inside. And at the center stood the woman they tried to erase. Not louder than her enemies, but stronger than their lies. The hearings burned. But Jasmine's answer came on paper. A single-page draft slipped onto the House Judiciary Committee's desk like a grenade. The Transparent Justice Act. Not lofty rhetoric, but a scalpel. Section 1. Mandatory disclosure of all exculpatory evidence. Section 2. Criminal penalties for officials who hide it. Section 3. A truly independent oversight council to investigate DOJ and courts. When she introduced it, Jasmine didn't pound the podium, didn't raise her voice. Soft, steady, devastatingly calm. If they could do this to me, with cameras rolling and a title before my name, what do you think they're doing to people who have nothing but their name? Silence spread across the chamber. Even her critics leaned back, listening, not out of courtesy, but out of recognition. Momentum followed like lightning. Civil rights groups, veterans, whistleblowers, even conservative think tanks called it essential. Millions of citizens flooded Congress with one message: vote yes or you're finished. Inside Capitol Hill, resistance crumbled like a brittle wall. Senators who once whispered doubts now quoted Jasmine word for word. House members who had kept their distance lined up beside her. The bill cleared committee unanimously, passed the House 412-23, and even the Senate, famously gridlocked, voted 92-8. When asked why he flipped, one senator said simply, "I saw what they tried to do to her, and I saw how she responded." At the White House, the signing was stripped of spectacle. No balloons, no brass band. Just a desk in the Rose Garden. The president beckoned Jasmine forward. Cameras clicked. Staffers held their breath. She didn't reach for the pen. She let the silence carry weight. When the president finally handed it to her, she cradled it with both hands, not as a trophy, but as a promise. This is not a win. This is a caution. Her words fell like iron on stone. They spread into textbooks, onto protest signs, even tattooed onto forearms. 60 days after nearly being erased, Jasmine had reshaped the law of the land. Yet she refused the spotlight. No talk shows, no redemption tours. Instead, she slipped out of Washington in a beat-up sedan, heading south like someone escaping a storm radar couldn't track. At dusk, she reached the old community center in South Dallas. The hum of flickering lights, the smell of wax floors and worn basketballs. She pulled up a plastic chair at a wobbly card table, opened a spiral notebook, and waited. Word spread. By nightfall, a line stretched out the door. Single mothers, laid-off mechanics, high schoolers with dreams deferred. Jasmine listened. She wrote. She asked questions no reporter ever had. What exactly did the eviction notice say? Who kept losing your paperwork? Which judge ignored your complaint? Cold breath in the dim hall. Voice quiet but steady. She promised nothing except that someone was finally listening. When the custodian shut the lights, she helped stack chairs, tucked her notes into an envelope, and stepped into the bruised steel sky. Only a stray cat watched her leave. Back at a budget motel, she ate a stale granola bar, read her notes under burning eyelids, and kept writing. Because victory speeches don't fix cracked sidewalks or close clinics. Between midnight and dawn, an idea surfaced. Fragile, luminous. Maybe the true legacy of her courtroom fight wasn't the law itself, but the faith it restored in people who had stopped believing power could ever hear them. The next afternoon, Jasmine sat outside a storm-battered church in Jackson, Mississippi. Folding chairs formed a rough circle on cracked asphalt. Veterans traded stories, denied benefits, lost medical records, claims dismissed without reason. Jasmine listened quietly, pen moving, breath steady, no cards, no speeches, just presence. When silence fell, an older vet leaned forward, eyes wet. "You're gonna run for president now that you saved the system?" Jasmine shook her head. "I didn't save the system. I just proved it bleeds." A hand reached for hers, rough with age. "You did what we thought no one dared anymore." No cameras caught it, only the creak of metal chairs and the breath of people daring to hope. By morning, graffiti on an abandoned factory wall carried her words farther than any broadcast. Days later in Flint, Michigan, Jasmine sat in a shuttered store turned legal clinic. The winter wind rattled the plywood. 3 space heaters glowed like embers around residents clutching bottled water. They spoke of rashes, crumbling teeth, worthless homes. Jasmine's knuckles whitened around a styrofoam cup as she wrote every name, every broken promise. A volunteer offered a microphone for livestream. She shook her head. You shared your pain enough. Today, I'm here to carry it, not broadcast it. When the session ended, she boxed affidavits and mailed them to the new Oversight Council, labeling the envelope, Case 01 Flint. Before leaving, she knelt beside a coughing toddler's mother. I can't promise speed, but I can promise daylight. The woman wept. Jasmine's eyes burned, but she stood tall, stepping back into the cold. Responsibility wasn't a cape. It was a weight she chose to keep lifting. Her notebook soon filled a suitcase. Evictions in Baltimore, bail abuse in New Orleans, ICE errors in Bakersfield, interpreter shortages in Flagstaff. Jasmine moved quietly, switching cars weekly, paying cash for motels, refusing security details. Her mind cataloged patterns. Which courts denied aid, which judges ruled for creditors, which police buried whistleblower evidence. She carried it all, mile after mile, case after case. Each night, Jasmine typed a brief report under the same heading. When the powerful shake, it's because truth stands tall. She emailed it to the Oversight Council, daring them to ignore it. Change followed quietly. A clerk in Georgia reinstated 300 expunged records. A hospital stopped billing survivors for rape kits. A Texas judge stepped down after her file exposed his conflict of interest. None of it hit national news by design. Jasmine didn't want applause. She wanted precedent. One rainy night in Houston, at a potluck under a leaking gym roof, a frail woman with silver braids approached. Jasmine rose to help, but the woman's hand shot out. Sit. Jasmine obeyed. The woman's grip was iron despite trembling hands. Child, you did what we feared was extinct. You made the powerful tremble. Promise me, keep that courage alive. If truth doesn't stand, we've got nothing. Jasmine's throat tightened. The courage is yours. I'm just passing it forward. A shaky phone recording spread overnight. The caption read, "When the powerful tremble because truth stands tall, justice begins." The words became a compass, painted on office walls, quoted in lectures, etched into memory. By summer, journalists found her in a small Oklahoma town, helping Native families fight pipeline seizures. Cameras swarmed, but Jasmine pushed them toward community elders. Asked why she still refused primetime interviews, she smiled wearily. The story was never me. It's what happens when ordinary voices chain together and refuse to whisper. Pressed on her future, she shut her notebook and said, "Relevance is a mirror the powerful hold to themselves. I'm here to build windows." The line made the evening broadcast. Jasmine ignored the follow-up request, spending the night drafting a grant for a mobile legal clinic in a city bus. By October, she returned to the South Dallas Center where it had begun. The custodian in a crisp uniform gripped her hand with pride. Inside, rows of new computers glowed, funded by settlements her work had sparked. Teens typed essays. A boy showed his grandmother how to send her first email. A volunteer offered to announce her arrival. Jasmine shook her head. For once, she let stillness sit beside her, and she realized this was hope, unmanufactured, alive. That night, Jasmine silenced her buzzing phone. Fame is loud, but justice lives in whispers. Driving into the red glow of city lights, her radio caught a college debate on amendments her act had inspired. A caller repeated the mural's words. "When the powerful tremble." Jasmine smiled faintly, eyes fixed on the road ahead. There were more cities to reach, more stories to hear, more truths to hold. The system could adapt, disguise itself, but it could never again ignore the crack sheet had forced into its marble walls. Somewhere, a law student underlined her quote for the 10th time, feeling hope spark alive again. Justice, they realized, was not an institution, but a stance. Jasmine drove on, headlights cutting darkness, heart steady, carrying proof that truth, once it stands, does not kneel. And yet, her fight left us with the question, what does Jasmine Crockett's struggle mean for us? Lesson 1. Justice is not a monument, but a battlefield. The system didn't malfunction. It conspired. It gambled on our silence. Jasmine showed that even the strongest deception unravels when faced with relentless truth. Her ordeal warns us. Due process means nothing if the people inside the courthouse don't fear accountability. Our duty? Vigilance. Reading past headlines, questioning sealed files, refusing to let jargon drown morality, because rights exist only if citizens animate them. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's refusing to trade truth for safety. Lesson 2. Stories change policy faster than numbers ever will. Charts don't move hearts. Faces do. A grandmother's eviction. A veteran's denied claim. A child's stolen future. The leaked DOJ tape didn't shock because of statutes. It shocked because voices bled through it. Voices that could no longer be erased. That's the call for us. To bear witness, to retell, to shine light where power prefers shadows. Because darkness retreats less from arguments than from exposure. Each of us carries a story, our own or one entrusted to us. And the Republic, it depends on whether we lift those stories high even when our knees shake. That's what Jasmine did. She turned outrage into unity, passing it like a torch. Real leadership, she showed us, isn't about applause. It's about listening. Not the number of microphones chasing your soundbite, but the voices you raise from the shadows. She refused the narcotic of fame, walking instead with people in cold halls and at kitchen tables. Her plastic chair politics taught us that empathy can't be phoned in from a green room. Policy written without listening collapses at the first touch of reality. She showed that solutions don't just come from experts in suits. They bloom when the governed co-author the governing. And sometimes, success is as quiet as someone whispering, "You made the powerful tremble." The next lesson hits like a drumbeat. Systems don't reform with civility, but with disruption. And disruption begins with whistleblowers, ordinary people risking everything for strangers' freedom. Jasmine's case turned on one anonymous envelope slit through a crack, proof that history can pivot on quiet courage. But courage dies without community. That's why she fought to protect truth tellers. Our duty is to shield them, share their stories, fund their defenses, vote out those who punish them. Because sunlight delayed is justice denied. In every office, every boardroom, someone is weighing whether to speak. Jasmine's saga pleads with us. Make the cost bearable. Treat whistleblowers not as traitors, but as guardians of the social contract. And her mantra, truth stands, power shakes, still challenges us. Victory isn't about humiliating enemies. It's about reshaping systems toward fairness. Jasmine accepted Thomas's reversal, not as revenge, but as leverage. She rejected easy vindication, the press tours, the book deals, choosing instead reforms that last long after the cameras shut off. Justice isn't about personalities, it's about systems. A society matures when it stops celebrating fallen villains and starts fixing the structures that let them rise. Real change isn't parades or speeches. It's audits, smart regulations, public defender budgets, and outcomes we can actually measure. Every citizen carries the responsibility to track progress, hold accountability, and refuse nostalgia over action. Jasmine's journey proves this. Her nights in motels, mornings in union halls, listening to everyday struggles, water bills, bail fees, zoning disasters, taught her that real reform comes from proximity, not ivory towers. Democracy thrives when policymakers log miles, not media minutes. Answers aren't invented in marble halls. They're crafted with a rigor of lived experience. Dignity is restored when a legislator sits down and explains change in plain language. Each of us can bridge the gap by volunteering, attending school boards, translating ballots, and dismantling the myth that government is distant. Words matter. One sentence, repeated, can outlast 1,000 press releases. When truth stands tall, the powerful tremble. Jasmine's story reminds us that language is ammunition, capable of rallying hearts, shaping movements, and inspiring action. Craft your justice mantra, short enough for a bus bench, deep enough to move a crowd. Spread it like seeds. Plant it where children will see. In time, those words grow in courtrooms, boardrooms, and communities. And perhaps the fiercest lesson, leadership isn't a throne, it's a relay. Jasmine's flame passes to the single mother speaking at city council, the veteran running claim clinics, the law student launching whistleblower hotlines. Courage isn't outsourced to public figures, it lives in each of us. The fight against injustice, bias, profiteering, environmental neglect needs countless Jasmines. And so the story doesn't end with a statue, but with an empty chair, waiting for the next person to sit, listen, and act.
The final lesson is clear. Pick up the notebook, join the circle, write the next chapter. Justice, like a muscle, grows only when ordinary hands refuse to let it atrophy. Institutions may quake, headlines fade, but the true measure of a society isn't which heroes it crowns, it's how many everyday guardians of truth it nurtures. People who, armed with empathy and evidence, stand so firmly even the mighty tremble. But what good is a lesson if it stays trapped on a mural, a headline, or behind the courtroom door? Now it's your turn. This isn't just Jasmine Crockett's story. It's a warning and it's a weapon. If you felt anger when the truth was buried beneath a $1.5 billion lie, don't just feel it, act. Systems don't change by chance. They bend when enough people pull together. Call your representatives. Demand transparency laws with teeth. Show up at city halls, support whistleblowers, volunteer in prisons, start oversight groups. And if you stayed silent, speak. Silence is what lets this machine grind people like Jasmine into dust. Be louder than the gavels that try to shut you down. Injustice doesn't fear outrage, it fears action. The next time a court tries to crush truth to protect power, it shouldn't just be one woman standing, it must be all of us. Thank you for watching, for standing with us on this journey for justice. Your support matters. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. And share your thoughts below. Let us know what moved you most.